Hello, I'm April, and welcome to the 5-minute grant making sessions, creating a logic model. What is a logic model? It's a diagram that explains things visually. Steps and activities of a project, reason why these exist, measurables and deliverables related to these activities in the project, expected outcomes for the project, and how the project may add to theory and advancement in knowledge in the field. As a note, please pause your screen as we're going through this video to look further into the model examples that we're going to share going forward. First example is a template created by ORSP just to get proposers off the ground when they're preparing their grants. This first column on the left is the inputs, essentially the populations and the institutions involved, and who are they, any highlights you can share about them, including problematic aspects that your project may be tackling. Activities is all about the action, what happens in the project, and how long, for example, each activity period lasts, and other details you can give the viewer about the activities. Measurables and deliverables, how exactly do you measure success to the highest degree of detail possible? If it's a scale and 7 out of 10 gets success, that's what you're going to tell them. And then you're also going to talk about deliverables. What are things you're planning on delivering at the end of your project? You will add it to that column as well. Then you go into outcomes, what you expect will be the outcomes and the benefit for the population and institutions. And then finally, that can translate to this idea of broader impact. Broader impact is a term borrowed from the NSF, and it really means this potential for your project to address problems beyond the scope of your project directly. So other people that might be having the same problem, other institutions that may be having the same problem, in how your project might get to help them as well. We can talk more about broader impacts if you would like. We have other videos on broader impacts. It's a very important point on grants. So please contact our office if you'd like to talk more about how to get broader impact statements and designs into your grant. Then the intellectual merit is all about theory and knowledge and advancing theory and knowledge based on the results of your project. And that feeds into this conclusion of the sort of theoretical loop where you started from in terms of theories or empirical evidence that you might have used to start the design of your project. How does this new knowledge come back and add to that starting theory that you had in the beginning? So it closes that cycle. And then the other cycle that closes is the transformation cycle at the top. And this is a trend in recent grant mechanisms that they're looking for how the project can either change something permanently for the better or contribute towards this very significant change, especially in systems, but also in people's lives, how they might have a different outlook of the world after going through your project, things like that. Whatever you feel might be promoting this kind of change. Now let's go into a few other examples. Here's where I would recommend pausing the screen to check out the entire annotated model if you'd like. So going into other examples, we can see here, this one is interesting. It calls input the first column, and it has a few sort of education details for the reader. It explains what each column is doing, and then it has also some little arrows that connects these blocks in different ways. And this is a very interesting way to also direct the reading of the viewer to connect the components of the project in the way you want them to see. And notice how graphically they also highlight the numbers with the white background and the percentages there in this outputs column. This is also a very interesting way of separating a little bit of sort of that quantitative side of the metrics that you're exposing from a more qualitative text discussion in the model. Another good example is this one. It separates rows for each stakeholder, and then you can see what happens to each stakeholder as they go through the activities and the outputs and the outcomes. And it's a really, really good way to help the audience understand what happens if there are different outcomes for the different stakeholders, which usually is the case for many projects. So I personally really like this example, and I think we can learn a lot from this one. And then this one is also related to a federal level grant. It also has the same components, but in a very different design. It sort of winds down and then has the outcomes in two layers on the right. One is for like a systems level change, and the other is a community level change. At the top, they have the problem statement, they have the goals. So they design things differently, but they still have all these components that we are looking at. And it's interesting to separate, as you notice, lots of these models separate these different stakeholders. Population and institutions, systems and communities, and the three levels the other model had. It's really interesting to separate this because very likely different stakeholders will experience your project differently, and there will be different outcomes from your project to these different stakeholders. So it's interesting to separate that for someone who is looking at your model to also understand that aspect of your project and really be on the same page with you in terms of what happens to each stakeholder in your project. Finally, how do I create a logic model? I am not a graphic designer, and how do I do this? That's exactly the idea here. What I use a lot is Google Drawings. This is what's displayed here for you. It's a free tool, and you can just literally create any model that you want. It has all these little elements and shapes and things that you can add in there. Very easy to use and free. You can also use things like Google Slides. You can use PowerPoint, the Apple Keynote software. There are tons of softwares out there that can help you create these logic models, and they can look really nice. So I hope this video was helpful. If you need more help creating logic models, please contact our office, and I'll see you in the next video.